Folks, we often talk about the impact of police violence on brothers, but they also impact sisters. The Marshall Project, they conducted a study that found black teens are more likely to be on the receiving end of police violence than any other group, particularly black girls. The data comes from six large police departments and found that black girls make up one fifth of the violent interactions with police. In comparison, their white counterparts only represent 3% of cases. The Georgetown Law and Poverty Center study found that black girls were seen as older and less innocent than their white peers. Joining us right now is Abbie VanSickle. She is with the Marshall Project, hailing out of Oakland, California. Abbie, that last point I think is important because oftentimes black girls are highly sexualized, and so therefore they aren't treated the same when they are being sexually assaulted. These differing standards, these sort of one standard for white girls and one standard for black girls. It's clear and evident when you look at these numbers.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. So when we were trying to understand the impact of police force on girls, and we started looking at these six police departments that gave us their data, the difference between black girls' experience and white girls' experience really stood out right away in the numbers. And then we tried to understand sort of what that actually means for someone's life, what kinds of long-term trauma that can cause. And so we interviewed families and girls from around the country about their experiences when police have used force. And we're talking about, force including handcuffs, guns pointed at them, pepper spray, takedowns on the ground. And those experiences were, incredibly powerful. And so we used that coupled with the data to try to, reach people to understand what these interactions can really mean for people.
And the thing that is important is that, again, when we look at these cases, we often talk about, especially when someone has been killed, we often talk about black men. But what's often overlooked is exactly what's happening with black women who are also being victimized at the hands of police.
Yeah, so just to be clear, when we looked at those departments, black men and boys stood out as, the far most common group to receive police use of force. But when we started to take a look at girls, it seemed like, black girls just had such a different experience than white girls. And that seemed to be, an important point that hadn't been highlighted, as much. And so we reached out to, academics who had studied this, including, as you mentioned, Georgetown. There's a professor there, Kristen Henning, who had really focused on this in a new book that she has. She talked about adultification, how when they have researched girls and how they're viewed, that white girls are oftentimes viewed as younger, black girls as older, and how that can really play into police interactions. If police are, encountering a child or a teenager and viewing them as older than they really are, and that can have some really serious repercussions in terms of the force that's used and how that interaction goes.
Questions for my panel. Reese, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is, what's next? I mean, we know that, black girls are over policed. I mean, this didn't really go into incidents involving security guards or school resource officers. Did you have any insight into how black girls are being treated by police in the school system?
Yeah, so there's been, some really excellent reporting about school resource officers and the way that that kids encounter them, what kind of force those officers use. We didn't look specifically at the experience in schools, but just as we were researching cases and reading about, different experiences that schools came up, time and time again. That's where kids are spending so much of their time. And so the kind of encounters that they have there can also be really life-shaping.
Faraji.
Abbie, thank you so much for doing the work with the Marshall Project. And I definitely, took some time to kind of read through all of your data. One thing that really stuck out for me, though, is this idea. It was mentioned in the 2017 Georgetown data when they said that there is no comprehensive national database of violent interaction between police and civilians. But when we looked at data for 6 large police departments that provided detailed demographic information on use of force incidents, we found nearly 4,000 youngsters 17 and under experienced police violence from 2015 through 2020. So I guess I kind of have 2 questions in regards to that. One is, we've been talking about this adultification bias, but how do we push the needle forward to creating a national database? And then 2, what's being done when Black girls in particular, 17 and under, are being put in these positions, objectified, abused? What can be done locally from the community standpoint?
Yeah, so in terms of the national database, there is not a national database of use of force incidents. We looked at the publicly available data we started with, the 50 largest police departments in the country, and there were 6 that provided data that would let us even look at this question in a detailed way. And, policing in America remains largely local. There are 18,000 local policing agencies, and they have their own systems, not a national database. And, it would be, I think, quite helpful in trying to understand, which departments are using which types of force, how many, are there differences in the way that police departments are using force, in the number of kids that they're encountering. All of those are questions that there isn't at this point a national database to be able to answer. There has been, more attention on building databases around fatalities, but here we're talking, sort of everyday encounters with police that can still lead to really life-changing trauma. And as to the point about local communities, as I said, policing is local, and local police departments and local leaders are accountable to local communities. And so I think that's sort of the point that I'd raise on that.
Thank you.
Greg.
Thank you, Roland, and thank you, Abbie. I had an old professor, Anderson Thompson. He used to call this kind of research what he called death watch studies. In other words, we count the bodies as we're assaulted and kind of move on to the next thing. I really would ask you what you think might be some out-of-the-box solutions. And looking at the opening discussion of Breonna Stewart there in Hagerstown, the fact that she had to write a letter of apology and then they dropped the charges, because she cursed at a police officer, when we all know that you can say whatever the hell you want to a police officer if you're not Black or brown, perhaps. I guess what I'm really asking is a broad question. It goes back to something Reese raised. Is there a solution in your mind? Because even at the local level, when you talk about police officers having the excuse that they are scared of someone because of their physicality, even 100-pound girls, and then one of the police departments said they're young and inexperienced. They left out white. But can police be reformed? And in your mind, what would be an out-of-the-box solution to this adultification, which really, quite frankly, is baked into this system since it really started when the first Black girls got off the boats and were treated like women for the purposes of reproduction?
Well, when I'm doing reporting, I always try to find sort of what, is there a place that this is better? Is there a solution? How might this change? And I did talk with, some experts who are training law enforcement agencies on trying to, understand better how to interact with kids, how to interact with young people. One of the things that came up in sort of interview after interview with families and kids is that they felt like the interaction just sort of escalated super fast, from something that was like a kid saying something back to an officer to suddenly they're in handcuffs, they're on the ground. In Breonna's case, they're pepper sprayed. And they all talked about, is there a way that an officer could call a parent? Could they have called my parent? Could they have slowed it down? Could they have diffused rather than escalated? And the experts I talked to said that they're working on trying to train officers to do that, but that's it's not every department in the country that's had that training. It is, they all discussed a long road ahead.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, Abbie VanSickle with the Marshall Project. We really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Folks, back to our Roland Martin unfiltered video in just one moment.
Oh, that spin class was brutal. Well, you can try using the Buick's massaging seat. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. Can I use Apple CarPlay to put some music on? Sure, it's wireless. Pick something we all like. Okay, hold on. What's your Buick's Wi-Fi password? Buick Envision 2021. Oh, you should pick something stronger. That's really predictable. That's a really tight spot. Don't worry, I used to hate parallel parking. Me too. Hey.
Really outdid yourself.
Yes, we did.
The all-new Buick Envision, an SUV built around you. All of
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punching!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?